Hi, I'm Beth from Sew Country, and today's tutorial is for the parachute knapsack. This is from Sincerely Gem Patterns. I'm going to be using fabric from Natural Nerd. It includes a panel that I'll show you later. This is a cotton canvas, and also I'm going to be using fabrics from Oh So Lovely. I'll have the links to both of those in my description. I have not sewn this pattern before, but I'm a huge fan of Sincerely Gem Patterns, so I was really excited to try it. It has a really unique flap feature, and so I'm excited to kind of try it out, and we'll go through the pieces together. It looks like it's going to be a really fun sew. No binding, so I'm interested to try and see how it works out. We are going to start going over the pieces. The first things we're going to talk about will be the gusset. We're going to have two exterior side panels. We're going to have two lining side panels. All of my pieces are going to be interfaced first with a medium weight interfacing like an SF101. On my exterior pieces, most of them I'm going to be interfacing with foam. I kept it out of the seam allowances, but I just wanted it a little bit more solid. The pattern does not call for foam. It calls for like a Decaville light. But I just did a backpack about a week ago, and it was a little soft, and so I wanted something a little bit firmer this time. So this one does have foam on all of my exterior pieces except my front pocket. I do have piece of zipper tape. I do have my two zipper gusset pieces. These two pieces are different from each other in a pretty big way. Like this one has a big belly kind of here. It's straight on this side, but a big curve here. The belly is for the back. So B is the way I remember that. So this is going to be your back zipper gusset. This one here with the waist is going to be, you can see it's kind of tapered down in the middle. This is going to be your front zipper gusset piece. You're going to have one exterior of each, and you can see they kind of meet there and fit in the middle. But you'll have one exterior each and one lining each. Again, I added foam to that exterior, keeping it out of the seam allowance. The next thing we have is our base piece. We do have one base exterior, one lining, foam on this one. Just want to point out just a minute. I don't know if you're noticing these prints, but these prints are all drawn and made by Jenna, who is the designer for Natural Nerd. This is not a higher computer generated. She draws this and makes this herself. Unique, one of a kind. Definitely check out, even if you're not a fan of cryptids like I am, check out her other rounds. She has amazing artwork, and you know you're supporting a small business for sure when you support her. This is going to be my front piece. Now this piece is going to have a pocket attached and a flap on it, which we're going to look at. So while this front might not have, you think, wow, that's a really big front piece, after we sew everything on it, it will have several components onto it, but we will have a lining for that front as well. This is the back panel. The pattern does call for an exterior zipper, but I did not want that. I wanted to leave this really plain and just showcase this feature really nicely. I will have to add an additional piece. This will be what we use to kind of cover up those strap handles, the ends of the straps, and we will add this later on, but we will have this piece. But that's the only piece. Besides, I think I have connectors down here at the bottom to have that traditional backpack, but we will keep the back kind of simple just so we can showcase this panel specifically. Like I said, on the front, we are going to do a front pocket. So this is going to be my front pocket. This is the exterior. This is my lining. I'm not adding anything by SF101 to it. I didn't really want it too stiff. I knew I wanted to kind of keep it light. I am going to have some darts, and we will sew those darts onto this front pocket to give it a little bit of a lift. Also with this front pocket, I'm using magnetic snap, and so I do have a flap. I am being extremely risky, but since this is a Bigfoot bag, I thought, hey, I'm going to try it. I'm going to try to make a minky flap. I have sewn with minky before, and I like it. I don't have anything on the lining piece, but that exterior I did attach a piece of foam, keeping it out of the seam allowance, and we'll see how that goes, but I thought that would just be a nice addition to my Bigfoot bag. We also have our back lining piece, and on this piece for the back, I'm going to put a zipper pocket. That is going to be how I'm going to turn the bag. I wanted to make my inside kind of mystical and foresty since my outside was a cryptid, Bigfoot specifically. I wanted the inside to kind of echo that kind of mystical feel. So I'm using all these prints. Like I said, it's from Oh So Lovely. I will have a zipper overlay, and this will be my zipper lining piece. This is a canvas, a cotton canvas, and so I did not add anything for the zipper lining. All of the other pieces do have at least a layer of medium weight interfacing, except this pocket piece. The only other thing we need is our straps and connectors. The pattern calls for webbing, and I'm back and forth. I think I'm going to use all webbing, but if I'm feeling a little bit fancy, I could try to make a strap out of the minky and just have that addition of that furry look on the back too. I don't know, it just depends on how I'm feeling, but we're going to start out knowing that we'll use webbing for the straps, but I could change that later. These are the components we're going to use to make this bag, so let's go ahead and get started sewing the parachute knapsack. I'm going to start sewing this pattern the way I start almost all of my sewing patterns, by working on that gusset. It's just an easy way I can take this whole stack of things and just turn it into one unit. It's usually pretty simple to work on a gusset. It doesn't require a lot of like brain effort, so it's a great way to get started. This gusset is a little bit trickier than some gussets. It's not just a straightforward sew it and you're done. First thing you have to realize is that the zipper is going to be attaching to the straight edges of your gusset pieces. The rounded curves will not be where you attach the zipper. That will be where you attach your panels. The other thing you need to know with this gusset is this is one of those gussets where we're going to leave a space. We are not going to sew from edge to edge. The pattern tells us to measure in and make a mark, and then that is where you will start sewing, and then you will sew all the way down, and then the mark on the other side is where you will stop sewing. So those are some things to remember with this type of gusset. So for me, I need to remember also that this is the back gusset because I only have one zipper pull, so it's going to matter to me which way I have my zipper closing. So we have a back and a front. Doesn't matter for me yet which way I attach which one I attach the zipper to first, because I haven't attached the pull yet. Once I attach my pull, that's when it will matter definitely. So I'm going to pull out my zipper, and what I'm going to do is this is going to be my exterior. So let me grab that back lining piece, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do this one since it's a little bit different and I have to keep that measurement in mind. I'm going to make for sure that I don't forget, and the best way I can do that is by sewing it all together instead of doing my typical basting. So I'm going to go ahead and lay my lining right sides up. I'm just going to lay my zipper right sides up, and then I'm going to start clipping. I'm going to clip these long edges together, and then after I have that clipped, I will come back in and clip my exterior on right sides down. I have everything clipped together, and I have a mark made at the beginning and at the end. I am going to make sure I put my needle down and start sewing here and go all the way down, full seam allowance, and then I will do the same on the other end, back stitching both times and get these 3 pieces attached. So this is a traditional zipper sandwich, even though we're sewing it a little bit differently by not attaching it from end to end. So now I have that zipper sandwich completed. I still have these pieces unattached. So my exterior or my lining neither attached to the zipper at the beginning. What I'll do is then I'm just going to flip these apart, pull them wrong sides together just like you typically would. We will go ahead and top stitch, but we will not top stitch until that mark there. So if you need to make the mark again, you can. For me, what I'll do is I will just kind of pull and note where that is. I can see my stitches starting right there, and that's where I'll start top stitching. I'm also going to make for sure that I take the time to keep that lining pulled tight. We know that the lining tends to want to shrink back behind there and get in the way of the zipper teeth, and I definitely don't want that, so I'm going to be pulling that the entire time, kind of making sure it stays where I need it to, so that I get a really nice top stitch. When I top stitch, I'm just going to go 1/8 of an inch away, and I will make sure to back stitch here since it's definitely not going to be caught in the seam allowance. It's going to be free for right now. I don't want to lose any stitches there. So this is what the back looks like. Everything's completed there. Top stitching, I still have these parts open. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same thing to the front. For the front also, we will have a straight edge, and then we will have a curved edge. So definitely make sure you attach your zipper to this straight edge, leaving that same gap on the beginning and the end of your zipper gussets. I'm going to do these next steps off camera. When I come back, I will have both the front and the back sewn on, top stitched. I will trim up my zipper tape and add the zipper pull. I have my zipper gusset ready to go. I have the pull attached, zippers trimmed. This is the back, this is the front, everything's ready. When we sew on these side panels to our gusset, we're going to be a little bit careful. The first thing we need to know is that these side panels are longer than they are wide. That's the first thing. If you are like me and you struggle to get really close to your zipper teeth because of your zipper foot, you might find that this side panel is a little bit too short for your gusset. That happens with any pattern. So when you line it up, you might be like, oh no, it's wrong. There is a problem there, but that's only if you don't get the seam allowance that the designer tells you to. So you may have to trim. But even so, it is still longer than it is wide. Make sure you check that out and follow the pattern piece for sure. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to take the exterior, clip it to the exterior. We're doing these one at a time. So exteriors together, linings together. They will not be connected. So I place that exterior right sides together. Let's add a few clips. And then what we're going to do is I'm going to flip it over. So I'm looking at my lining. I'm going to pull that lining back. And then I'm going to sew with the seam allowance given in the pattern all the way across with that zipper attached. So just like you would normal for an exterior. You can see my zipper is being included in there. I'm holding it down and going all the way across there. Now we're going to do the same thing for the lining, but we're not going to have the zipper in this part. So my lining is going right sides together with my lining. I'll add a few clips just to the lining pieces, no exterior involved. Flip it over so that I'm looking at my exterior, pull my exterior out of the way. But now that zipper, we're going to make sure it stays out of the way too. It's a very small spot. But you can see we will not have the zipper there in the lining, or I hope you can see it. It's so hard to make sure you can see everything on camera properly. You're going to use that same seam allowance, back stitching and going across that section. Now here comes the part where the zipper should be, and we are sewing over just that empty spot. No zipper there. I'm going to open this up and kind of show you what it looks like. So you can see my exterior and my lining are completely unattached. Nothing there, but you can also see there is a hole here. This will not work. We can't leave that hole there. So what we do, what the designer tells us to do, is to make snips. So we are going to snip into the lining only, not the exterior, up to, it's just going to be around that zipper. So on each side of the zipper, you're going to make these snips to your stitch line. You are not going to cut through your stitches, just to that stitch line. This will allow us to pull that lining back. And when we top stitch, you can clip this, whatever you need to do. And I need to get it to lay just a little bit better there. So when I pull this back and I top stitch, it's going to close up that hole. So I'm going to have to be a little bit careful. I'm going to hold it like this, flip it back over, and I'm going to top stitch now. At this point, my exterior and my lining will still be separate, but this technique allows me to close up that zipper so that there's no hole anymore. So now you can see, and mine's not laying quite, there we go. So now you can see they're still separate. Here's my lining pieces. Here's my exterior. Everything's still separated. It's not together at all, but we don't have the hole anymore. So that is the way you do that gusset. Now, at this point, the gusset's done. You'll complete those same steps on the side. I have to trim up my gusset. Nothing wrong with the pattern. It's that I can't ever get close enough. With some patterns, it doesn't matter as much, but where this one's kind of on a curve, I definitely have to do the trimming on that. So I'm going to do that, and then we will continue on with the rest of the pattern. I'm going to make my front pocket now. I pulled out my front pocket exterior and lining piece, as well as 2 magnetic snaps. I used the pattern piece to mark the placement for the magnetic snap on the exterior, but I also checked the measurements just to make sure I had it correct. I added a small piece of Decaville Light to the back of this, just where that snap is going to go. I used my seam ripper to cut 2 small slits, and then I just pushed those prongs through. I'm going to add the washer on the back, and then I'm just going to push those prongs out. Once I get it somewhat opened, push it down on the table to get it completely flat. And that is how I will have that magnetic snap attached on the exterior. The next thing I'll do is I'll work on these darts. So I traced the darts directly from the pattern piece, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold them right sides together so that the end of the darts are on top of each other and the point is even. So you can see it comes straight to that point and everything matches up there. I'm going to put a clip on this piece. And then what I'll do, since it's folded right sides together, I'll just start here at the bottom, back stitch, and sew all the way down on that line. And that will create that little bit of a pleat so that it has a little bit extra dimension and stands out a little bit from the exterior front of the bag. Now what I'll do that I have that sewn is I'll just trim off a little bit of that extra, making sure, of course, not to cut my seam. And then I can poke that out and see that I have that dart made with that little bit of extra dimension there. Now I'm going to complete that on the other side of the lining and both sides of my exterior. Now that we have our darts sewn and trimmed down, what we're going to do is we're going to take these 2 pieces, place them right sides together, and sew them together. I'm going to take the time to clip and match up all my seams. Now that I have these 2 pieces clipped together, I'm going to leave an opening in the top. That is going to be where I'm going to turn this right sides out. So I'll start sewing here, back stitch, go all the way around, then back stitch again. Use the seam allowance given the pattern, and then trim down your seam allowance once you're finished sewing it. Then we'll just turn it right sides out and top stitch. When trimming, I leave my opening untouched. I do not trim it at all. but I start at an angle around the side and then continue going around. On the corners, I'll kind of angle that as well, kind of make it a softer edge so that I have less bulk there. Take the time to use a blunt object like a stiletto, chopstick, whatever, to kind of poke out those corners really nicely. If your opening's not already closing on its own, just put your fingers in there and pull so it will close on its own. And then we're just going to top stitch just along this top edge. When I'm top stitching, I'm doing about 1/8 of an inch away from the folded edge. We are going to go ahead and set the pocket aside for just a few minutes and pull out the flap pieces. You will have an exterior and a lining. Go ahead and add the magnetic snap to the lining piece of your flap, just like we did for the pocket. You'll make sure you use the pattern measurements. And I also check against the pattern piece. If you print out your pattern pieces, that's something I do with both of them just to make for sure I have it right. Then at that point, what you're going to do is you're going to place your exterior and your lining right sides together, add a few clips. Once you have the flap clipped together, you're going to sew the 3 sides, leaving that top completely open. That's how we'll turn it. Now, I've worked with Minky before. It is a little tricky to work with. It's slippy, and so that's something you definitely have to watch. But also, I feel like it does best if you stabilize it properly. Once you have that sewn right sides together, you're going to go ahead and trim up your sewn edges, not the top, leave it alone. But I'm going to actually trim mine outside. Something I do know for sure about Minky is that it is best done to cut outside or in an area where you can easily clean up the mess and it can get the fuzz and the fur everywhere. So I'm going to trim this up. And I'm going to go ahead off camera and turn it right sides out. And then here's my flap turned right sides out. Now the pattern does tell you to go ahead and top stitch all around the sewn edges. I am definitely not going to do that with this Minky, just because if I would do it, it would have 2 effects. Some of the stitches would be just hidden in this little fur, and then the other thing is it would be a very stark contrasting line on the parts that you could see the line, and so it just doesn't look good for this one. But if I was using a cotton canvas or cotton woven, vinyl, anything else, I would definitely top stitch. So now what we're going to do is we're going to pull out that exterior front and we're going to make some measurements on it for the pocket placement. Here is my bag front. I have that line made. I even have my center mark kind of figured out there. I'm going to take my flap exterior side up, so you shouldn't be looking at your snap unless you riveted it in. You're going to place your flap directly on that line and making sure that you have it centered, making sure it's exterior side up, and then you're going to sew across the top of that flap with the seam allowance given in the pattern. I want to make note, I don't know if I mentioned, but this pattern comes in 3 sizes. So when you're getting your measurements for everything in the pattern, make sure you use what size you're working on. So for me, I'm working on the medium, but there's measurements given for the small and the large as well. So just be careful with that so you don't get confused or have any problems later. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up my flap, and you can either draw a line or you can use a measurement all along there. I'm going to use a measurement on mine, and I'm going to sew across the flap, and that will just hide that seam so that we will not see a raw edge seam whenever we're looking at our flap. Just to show you, this is why I did not top stitch that Minky. You can just see it doesn't look good if I would have top stitched around the flap, so that's why I didn't do it. But now I have that line attached. to have the flap on the front, and you can see now no raw edges shown. Really cute way of doing it. So pull back out that front pocket piece, and you are going to line it up so that it can meet, kind of butt right up against that bottom of your flap piece. It should fit pretty perfectly. Just make sure you check and that everything's good. And then what you're going to do is you're just going to sew around those 3 sides to just attach this to the front of your bag. Make sure you back stitch at the start and stop really good, because that will have a lot of like kind of pulling and tugging where you're getting in and out. Trim up any loose threads you have, and then go ahead and you can check your snap, and let's go ahead and set this part aside. We are done with our front, and we'll start working on the back piece. It's time to start working on the back of this bag, and I have really struggled. I was going along with the pattern and everything, and I kept getting like, I don't know if this is what I want to do, and so I've just decided to make some changes. I have decided that I am not going to be using this piece. This piece is supposed to go right here to kind of cover up the strap ends, and I just decided I didn't want to do it. I also was going to put this piece back here, and I don't think I'm going to do that either. Now, I could change my mind on that, but right now I'm leaning towards putting this piece on the front. This is a decorative piece, and I'm conflicted because I want to show it beautifully, but I don't want it to kind of get lost in the material or take away. I want it to be an addition. So I'm trying to decide the best way to do it. So I'm not 100% yet, but I'm leaning towards putting this on the front instead of where I was going to put it on the back. I feel like it's just too much here, and I really want to showcase this panel because I like this panel. So we are going to change up a couple things. Sorry about that. I typically don't do that so much in a video, but my heart's just leading me to make these changes. Anyway, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add these bottom connectors. I'm just going to do this a simple way. I put 2 D-rings on some webbing. I cut it according to the pattern measurements. I am going to top stitch this edge here just to hold that connector in place. I used the pattern measurements, and I found out where to place this, or I should say not the pattern measurements, but I used the pattern piece to find where to place these D-rings, and I'm going to place these both on here, so you'll see me do those steps, and then we will start working with the strap and the handle. So whenever I place this, I'm just going to make sure basically that I do have a decent amount of overhang, and I have it angled going up. That's the way I want to do it, and I'm just going to clip that in place, and then I'll just baste it 1/8 of an inch away. You can always add a rivet if you feel uncomfortable and feel like it needs a little bit more security on this piece. After you do the first one, you'll definitely want to try to make sure that you have the same amount of overhang on the second. You can measure this, draw a line if you want to, whatever you need, or just kind of eyeball it, however you feel comfortable. You're going to make a center mark here, and then you're going to go down so many inches. The pattern tells us how many inches to go down, and then that is where I'm going to place that grab handle. I am just going to put it center. So there's my center mark, and then I'm going to make sure it ends on that line. So this is the center, here is the line, and that's how I'm going to baste it in place. You could of course use some pins or double-sided tape at this step if you're worried about the shifting, but I feel like it's decently okay. I am going to kind of keep this a little bit simple, and I am just adding the webbing right now. I'm not adding any hardware, so I am simply going to lay down. I have 2 separate straps, and I'm going to lay down those raw edges there. This backpack's going to be for me, so after I finish it, that's whenever I'll go ahead and make sure I have the right measurements and add an adjustable bar then. I'm not going to until I get to try it on and make sure I like the fit. So this is what I have at this point. I'm going to throw those straps over that way. Now, to cover up that raw edge, I did decide to do something a little probably crazy. I don't know, but it's just what I felt like I wanted to do. So what I did was I took a piece of 1-inch webbing and then I wrapped that minky around it to make kind of like a case. I left it too long so I'd have plenty of chance to kind of get in there and not worry about the size or anything or things shifting. And so this is the way I'm going to do it. I'm going to lay it over those raw edges and I'm going to make sure I have it evenly distributed on, like, not like it's too high on this side, too high on that side. Make sure everything looks good. And then I'm just going to sew this in place. I took some time to really make sure I had the measurements correct on this. I want this to look good as this is kind of more of a feature focus here. So I am really paying attention to make sure I have everything measured correctly there. I feel like I do. So now it is time to just sew across here. I'm going to sew 2 rows, also 1/8 of an inch away at the top and 1/8 of an inch away down at the bottom, and then I'll just base the sides closed, and then that way that is secure and it does hide those raw edges. I completely like this. I feel so much better. You know, sometimes you just gotta kind of go with what you feel is calling you. So this is what I like. I definitely am not putting that decorative piece right here. It would just really mess with the aesthetics of this bag, and so I'm not doing it. So this is how I'm considering my bag done. I'm going to just kind of roll these up and clip them so they're not hanging around everywhere. But I didn't add the zipper. I didn't add the one piece. Just wanted to do it my way because I had a certain look in mind. It's okay. So let's go ahead and look at that front again with that decorative piece, and let's just see how we're feeling about it. So I'm leaning towards putting it right here. I'm going to look at the camera and actually see how that looks. And I know that I could put a backing around it, but I don't think I want to do that either because I think that would detract from the print. And I'm already using up some of the print with my flap and with this magnet. So I think I have a little mark there where I think I want it to go. Maybe a little bit lower. Yeah. I think I'm going to put it right here. So this is not a magnetic snap. It is a decorative piece. So I only have this one piece. So what I've got to do is I am going to put my prongs up. I'm definitely going to use an erasable pen while I'm doing these marks just to kind of figure everything out really good. That looks great. I think that's what I'm going to go with. I do have a washer that I'll put on the back, and so I'm going to start making those slits now. You can use a seam ripper or you can use a scalpel, which is what I'm going to be using in this one. But I'm going to be going through all the layers. I have foam on the back of this, so I will go through the foam. I will add that washer on the back. You can add anything else if you wanted. You could add tape, you could add another layer of Decavit, whatever you want. But the main thing you want to do is go very slow and just kind of poke a little hole here. You can also add fray check if you're worried about it. I did interface this piece already, so I really don't feel like I'll have a problem with fraying with this. So I'm not too worried about that. Take my prongs to the outside. I just have that gorgeous piece there. I do have a little marking spot there that I'll have to remove with heat, but that is how that's going to look, and I love it. I think it looks great. Okay, so now it's time for us to go on to our lining pieces. I'm going to set these pieces aside. We have the gusset. We're just moving right along. Pull out those lining pieces. I'm working on the lining back. I'm going to add a zipper overlay and a zipper pocket, of course. So you don't have to do this. You can just do a traditional pocket, however you want to do it. I'm pretty sure this bag is going to be turned through this zipper pocket, so you definitely want to add a pocket of some type. Center on your zipper overlay. And at this point, what we're going to do is we're going to start stitching around the exterior portion of this overlay. Now my overlay is a raw edge material. I do not have to worry about any fraying. I also am not adding any glue, double-sided tape, anything. I'm just kind of holding it. Do I have a chance of it shifting? Sure, I do, but I'm going to try to go slow. You can see how slow I'm going, and that will help me to not have as much risk of shifting. I also just did one back stitch instead of pulling my threads to the back. If you want a neater finish, definitely do that. You can also add rivets here on the ends. That would be a really nice decorative touch if you're wanting to do that. Where this is the interior, I'm not going to do any decorative touches so much like that with the rivets here, but definitely would be something nice, especially if this would be the exterior of your bag. Oh, you know what I just thought? I want to add one of my tags here, so that won't be too hard to do, but let's go ahead and just take up a few of those stitches and slip it right inside there, and that'll be a perfect addition to this interior without really any extra work at all. So you can see I'm just going to pull up a few stitches and I'm just going to slip it in. And you just want to kind of tuck it under just a little bit, and that's adorable. Look at that. Okay, so now you have a choice. If you had not done like me, if you remember from the beginning, you wouldn't have to make the choice, but I need to decide if I'm either going to back stitch or pull my threads long. Since I already have a back stitch at the top, I think I'm going to put in the effort and pull these threads long to make it look a little bit neater since I've already messed it up once. So I pulled the threads long, and now I'm just going to go ahead and start and stitch past that spot and then leave my threads long again, and I will pull it to the back and finish it. Okay, so now I'm just pulling those threads long. I will knot those threads off camera just so you don't have to watch that. And also while I'm off camera, I am going to cut the inside so you can see where the stitches are. I will stay about 1/4 of an inch away and cut a circle all the way around. That's where I will put the zipper and also my pocket. So when you come back, I'll have those 2 steps done and we'll be ready to move on to completing that zipper pocket. I knotted the threads in the back and I trimmed out the opening here, and this looks amazing. And you won't believe what I found in my stash. I found this amazing zipper from So Majestic. Oh my gosh, this is going to be beautiful. So what we're going to do now is we're going to set that aside. We're going to pull out the lining, and I'm just going to do this the simple way that I like to do it. It's not perfect way to do it, but this is what's easier for me. Is I'm going to have my lining right sides up, and I'm just going to lay that zipper tape on there right sides up, and I'm going to sew this with about 1/4 of an inch seam allowance along that short edge of the lining and the long edge of the zipper tape. Now that I have that side sewn, what I like to do, and this is an unnecessary step, is I just like to flip that lining so the lining is wrong sides up and the zipper is right sides up, and then I just tack down that raw edge, and so about 1/8 of an inch away. When I tack that down, that just lets it lay flat for me to insert it in that box, but definitely this is not necessary. You can skip this step completely. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do that same thing on the other side. Now at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and cut this bottom open. I already know that we are turning, or at least I think we are turning this bag through this pocket. So I'm going to go ahead and cut it, and then that will allow me to tack down that other side like I did the first side. So now that I have that separated, I can go ahead and tack down that side. I don't have my zipper pull on yet, but after I finish doing this, I'll go ahead and put it on, and then we will add this to that lining. So this is the way that lining looks. I'm just going to take this piece and I'm going to make sure I have it kind of centered. Okay, have that centered. So now what we're going to do is we're going to sew around the interior box here. If you want, some people prefer to use some double-sided tape at this step. You can definitely use that. Or if you want, you can just do it kind of like slow and shifting and adjusting as you go. Now, I never start stitching here. I want to give myself time whenever I get around that corner to straighten up my stitches. So I'm going to pull that zipper pull closed. I'll be making sure that the teeth are in the middle of this box. I'm also going to make sure that I'm kind of pressing down to make sure things are staying flat. Lots of times when I do zippers like this, my zipper tape will be wavy and it kind of annoys me like that. So these are the steps I will take to try to get just the prettiest look on this zipper. Also, you can back stitch or you can leave your threads long and pull them to the back and knot them, whichever your preference is. Okay, everything looks great. I'm going to lift up that lining. And now all I want to do is I just want to sew down the sides. Make sure everything's nice and flat. And just sew down the sides. You are not closing the bottom because we're leaving it open to turn this bag. Okay, now what I want to do is I'm just going to trim those sides, trim everything up. And then that is done. We are at the end. So I have this pile of everything completed. We're going to go through everything just to make for sure that we have everything pulled together the way we should. First thing we have is our gusset. Now our gusset doesn't have a bottom and we need to make for sure that our lining and our exterior can be completely not like detached because it's still connected, but kind of removed from each other. We have to sew these pieces independently, the exterior to the exterior, lining to lining. So that's our first thing. Make sure you put your center marks. So I put marks down here on both the exterior and the lining, and then also in the center here. That will help us in attaching everything on the gusset. We have two bases. Make sure you make your center, or actually make sure you make your quarter marks. So we should have 4 marks on the exterior and the lining. We have this back pocket, or it's back for me. You may do yours on the front. I'm going to go ahead and open it. I made my center marks on this piece as well. I have the front and made my marks on this piece, made my marks on the front lining, and made my marks on the back, the center marks on the back. I did go ahead and kind of wrap this up. If you're someone who's good at attaching the hardware ahead of time, go ahead and put those adjustable bars on there. It's just, I struggle with it, so I'm waiting on that. Plus, it will help me to be able to try it on to make sure I don't have any extra length. So these are the pieces that we have. I am going to start with the front. So let's move the back pieces out of the way. Pull out your front exterior or front lining. Let's go ahead and open up this zipper. I think we keep the, I don't know if we keep the zipper gusset open yet or not. So what we're going to do is we're going to kind of remind ourselves that this concave, the front part, the part without the belly here, that is the front. The part with the belly, the convex, the rounded, that is going to be the back. So we're attaching everything here to the front for the front panel, the front lining. We will separate the two pieces and attach them one at a time. So first thing we'll do is we will just match up the center marks on the top. So for me, I didn't clip into my exterior. I just clipped into my lining pieces. I made marks on my exterior. Also, in case I don't remember to tell you, we will be sewing the exterior and the lining with 2 different seam allowances. We will have a little bit of a bigger seam allowance on the lining just to make sure we get a little bit better of a snug fit, so keep that in mind in case I don't think to mention it again. So I just do a couple stabilizing clips right there. Then I take that bottom and pull it all the way down and start matching it up there at the bottom. I got everything sent around. Everything did fit perfectly at the end. I'm just checking to make sure everything looks good, and it looks really great. So I did open the zipper like halfway through. I just felt like I needed that extra room, and it did help, so I may do that again on the lining. I'm going to go ahead and close the zipper while I'm clipping everything together, but then I'll probably open it again. Now, this is the exterior, so let's go. And so I'm going to pull this back just so you can see it clearly. This is the side we just sewed. We are attaching the lining to this spot. So the same side. This is all open. So I'm just going to kind of flip all this in here, and let's do it this way. And I'll probably sew it the same way I sewed the exterior with that against the bed. I feel like that's probably the smartest way to do it. Now I'm going to match up the centers just so I can kind of get my head around the best way to do this. But I'm going to have to pop everything kind of forward so that we can get a really good match on this. There's no way I could continue clipping it this way. I'm just getting it started this way. So now that I got that, you can see that we're going to have to push everything in like this to continue to go around, because this bottom has to come all the way down here. Everything fit together really nice, but it was just a little tricky to sew around the curve. Like, I felt like I'm not good with a bigger seam allowance. I know most people prefer a bigger seam allowance, but when I have a big seam allowance, it's like it's harder for me to stay on that proper seam. So I struggled a little bit with this. So I don't know about you if you have that problem. If so, just kind of be mindful of your seam there. Okay, I have the lining all clipped on. I'm going to again lay it wrong side on the bed of the machine. It feels a little like kind of bunching here and everything. So what I'll do is I'll just go slow. I will not rush any of these stitches. I'll make sure whenever I'm doing a stitch that making like there's no bumps, puckers, folds of any other fabrics underneath, because it's kind of an awkward maneuvering here. I'll also make sure I take that larger seam allowance so that my lining is just a little bit more snug. I just want to stop for a minute and kind of let you see kind of what I have. Here's that exterior seam I sewed, and I'm having to kind of push it back out of the way, so I'll make sure that I can get that clear spot to sew the lining. So you can see it's a little bit tricky, but this is a way to sew this bag without having to do a drop-in lining or a bound bag. So she's giving you the option of a birthed bag with that same really cool shape. So it's an interesting technique to try and very creative, especially for people who are nervous about binding a bag. Another thing is, even if you're not nervous about binding a bag, having a bag done this way gives you a very smooth, clean look inside. Now, I love the bound bag, always do, but it's fun to kind of do this way sometimes too and have a different look. And when you open up your bag, all you'll see is just the beautiful lining. You won't see that binding all wrapping around there. Make sure I'm pulling all of that out of the way. It's a big old bunch of stuff there, but just push it out of the way. So my front lining and exterior are sewn. So now what we're going to do is we're going to push these wrong sides together. I am just smoothing everything out. I'm going to go ahead and zip this up just so I can kind of get a good look at everything to see how everything is looking at this point. Everything looks good. I feel like I did a really good job on it all. I have no problems with the way it is looking. It's shaping out really well. So now what I have to do, as you can see, this is what we're left with. This is the back gusset pieces. We still have both backs, exterior and the lining. I'm going to do those same steps all over again to attach the back. I will do those off camera and then we'll come back and we will add the base, turn the bag, and then it's done. I still have to put those adjustable bars on, but that'll be the very last thing I do. I have everything sewn together except the base, and I'm gonna cheat. I am going to bind the base. I am tired. I am ready to go ahead and be done with it. I know binding well, and I'm just ready to move on, guys. I'm sorry. It's not hard to do it the other way. It's just a few more steps and I'm just ready to kind of be done with it. I'm noticing I'm having some wrinkling on my panel. A little nervous about that, and I don't want to have to keep smushing things around, so this will be the easier way for me. I feel pretty confident that the wrinkling will come out with an iron, but I'm just taking it this way. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to baste just around this edge to kind of close it up so it's a little bit easier. Then I will take my two main panels, my two bottom panels, and I'm just going to place them wrong sides together. I'm just going to baste around there. I'm also going to close up that inside pocket since I'm not going to use it. Then I'm going to clip this base to the exterior right sides together. So you're going to see me do all these steps and everything. I'm going to kind of go a little fast through them because you have seen me do these several times, but I will do them on camera so you can kind of watch the process, and I'll just speed it up a little bit. But if at any point ever you have questions about something, just write me, let me know, and I definitely will answer anything I can for sure. When I baste, I'm just talking about doing 1/8 of an inch. So I'll be doing 1/8 of an inch around this, around the bottom of the bag, and then I'll also close up the pocket with 1/8 of an inch from that folded edge. I'm just going to open up this pocket. Like I said, since I'm not using it, I'm going to just pull it out. And then we can't just put our fingers in there and pull. It won't do that way. So we actually have to start by folding in one side. Once we start getting some of it folded in, it kind of works like the other way. It'll start folding in and you can make it work. So I'm just going to fold in that edge, come over to the other side. I shouldn't say edge, I should say side. Do the same thing, get that kind of started, and then the rest of it will pretty much fall into place. Now that I have that clipped, I'm just going to close up that opening by sewing about 1/8 of an inch all along that folded edge. Pocket is done. Slip it back in there. Gonna go ahead. It doesn't matter to me too much right or wrong, but I think I'm gonna have my print going this way towards my front. So I'm going to match up the center marks on the front first. Is that front long side? I know you can't see right now, but I will push it down in just a minute. So I made the clips along that front side, and I'm just clipping a little bit along that long edge to kind of get it stabilized. I'm going to come to the back and do the same thing. And then I'm going to clip in those quarter marks and start just kind of shaping this curve all the way around. I got everything clipped around. I'm going to start sewing this by just going around with a basting stitch. Then I will come back, clip binding, and go around with the full seam allowance. The reason why I like to do this basting stitch first is just because it's an easier way to get everything attached. I am finding, especially with this pattern, those bigger seam allowances just get me. So I need to practice sewing with the bigger seam allowance. It is much easier for me to stay on track with the smaller one. So that is why I based first. It just gets everything attached in an easier way for me. I am going to be shifting this back as I sew it, just kind of lifting up, following the curve. If you have any trouble with things slipping, grab out your hemostats and just kind of hold it all together. I have that base attached. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut binding and I'm going to use waterproof canvas. It's just easier to wrap around and go in with that full seam allowance. And then I will go ahead and do that part off camera and also turn the bag right sides out. We'll come back to look at everything and to add those adjustable bars. I am trying to get this bag completely in frame. Even though this is the medium, this is still so big that I'm having a hard time getting it all in the camera. The shape looks great. Everything looks great. I do need to do some shaping and some clipping, but look at that shape. Look at that structure. This is a gorgeous bag. I love the way it looks. I did have some struggles with it. It's not the pattern, just wasn't me and my game. But I love the way it looks. I love this hardware. I love the print. I love everything about it. Now, for some reason, I did have a lot of wrinkling on my back panel. No wrinkling on the front. Use the same material, so it's kind of surprising on that. I'm going to have to spend quite a bit of time getting out all the wrinkles there on the back. You can see it's just going to take me a while. I'll be able to get them out, but I'll just have to go slow and put a lot of effort into it. Sometimes it happens like that. Let's go over how we are going to fool with these straps. I'm definitely going to have to trim them down. They're super long. I don't know. I probably, the pattern probably had the length, and I probably doubled it because that just seems really crazy big. But anyway, I want to show how you do these straps. I am not going to sew them. I'm just going to show how you put the bars on because I'm going to measure them and try it on myself to make sure it's the way I want. So I'm going to adjust my angle so that we can get this kind of close. So I will have the bag out of focus and just focus on doing this part. So what you do, make sure the strap's not twisted, but you take the free edge and you go up and over that bar, come back down, and that is your first step. Now I'm going to go ahead and make a big kind of loop right there because my next step will be to go down here at this D-ring and go through it. I want to kind of go in the back way. And that way I can go up and under this bar again. And pull it out. Now at this point what I will do is once I get it the length I want, I will fold those raw edges in and then I will sew across there. Now like I said, I'm not going to do that now because I truly feel I need to trim these down quite a bit. But once I get the size that's decent for me, like I want it to be able to be adjustable because in case I'm wearing a big coat or because it's in the summer, I want it to be able to have some wiggle room. So I'm not finishing that right now. I am going to iron everything, also take my time. But let's go over some of the specifics of this pattern. I did change up several things, but the shape is amazing. Let's go ahead and get back out so we can kind of see more of that amazing shape of this bag. I love the wideness of it. You can fit so much in here. Let's just peek inside. Only thing I did inside was I just added a zipper pocket. But man, that's a huge bag. This definitely can hold a lot of stuff. The large, I can't even imagine how big it would be. You could add more pockets in there. You have a front flap, and this would be a great place for like things that you want to kind of be careful with or not lose or have easy access to. The pattern is the Parachute Knapsack from Sincerely Jen. I definitely will make it again, but the material, the fabric, the panel, the hardware, like the decorative plate, the zipper pull, the tag, all of those are from Natural Nerd. Now, she does draw this herself. This is her own artwork. And so by buying her stuff, by purchasing from her, you're supporting an actual artist. It's not a company that they're buying from. She's drawing this herself. If you go into her Facebook group, you can even watch her draw it. It's really cool. She'll put up clips of her actually working on it. She will ask for, you know, like suggestions like, hey, what do you think about this? It's really cool to see her go from just the idea or the thought all the way to the completion and ready to buy. This round is going on now. It's an amazing round. Even if you don't like cryptids, there's plenty of other prints for you. So just look around, check her out. I'll have the link to her website and her Facebook group in my description. Of course, I'll have the link to the pattern. Thank you for watching this tutorial. Even though it wasn't a perfect tutorial and it did not make a perfect bag, thank you for being here with me while I went through it. And today, in your sewing room, I hope you are able to sew something that is close to your heart, that you believe in, that's a little weird, even if no one else believes in it with you. Thank you so much, and I hope you have a great day.